Luke here for Following Strength. We're joined by Shane Kennedy, one half of the Lalas Brothers podcast, coming to us struggling through difficult internet. How are you, mate?
I'm good. Very good.
I've been a fan of your content for a long time. Like, both of you are wonderful to watch. And it's a real pleasure to have you join us at Following Strength. Someone called us a small channel. I said I prefer the term growing. And
Yeah, go on, yeah.
seeing where we can get to. But yeah, catch us up, man. I don't know this. How did the Lalas Brothers podcast start?
To be honest, like we only a couple of months ago we were talking about it ourselves. So like, as everybody probably knows, there's a big age difference between me and Vitautas. Like I'm 27, Vitautas is 42. So like we always get people wondering is like, oh, are you brothers? Like, what's the name the Lalas Brothers about? And it got to a stage you kind of just you just let it go. There's no point of explaining it. Like, first off, we're not brothers. we're not even from the same country. We live in the same country, but no, like I actually joined Vitautas' gym in 2019. So we started the channel in 2020 kind of times. Before that, I was going to other gyms in the area, and it was just by chance, like going to other gyms, and I kind of got not kind of bored of them, but like they weren't really doing it for me anymore. As well as that, they were kind of a bit more expensive, and I was an apprentice at the time. Like I was on like €300 a week, trying to run a car, trying to get to work, food, get the gym. Like, the gym wasn't really the biggest payment that you want to be worrying about. So I was came to this gym and just walked up the stairs into it, looked around, and I was like anyone that's been to the gym, they'll know that like there's kind of pictures of like the boys when they were competing, so like both Marius and Vitautas. So there's the trophies, pictures of like Eddie Hall armrests and Vitautas in Giants Live. That was up on the wall, and I really paid no attention to it. I remember just chatting to him, sure, like any other person would chat away. And then just as it went on, you can talk to Vitos. Like anybody that knows that comes to the gym, you can just chat to him and just kind of start chatting about this and about that. And I asked him just stupidly, because I didn't know at the time, I was like, are you a strongman? Like, little did I know he was like 2013, like Arnold's champion, like, kind of small things like that. And then I asked him, like, did he have a YouTube? Because when I was in secondary school, when I was finishing school, like me and my friends, we were really into that kind of YouTube era of like, you had the Gymshark athletes coming up. You had like the places these David Lays and Jeff Seed, all these kind of guys that like, they were just big influencers. They were making good money. Probably they were getting millions of views on their YouTube videos. And like YouTube was it wasn't booming at that stage, but like you kind of see it kind of tapered off into 2019, but you still had the likes of Brian Shaw was kind of kicking off. Eddie Hall was with his content. I remember it's not strongman, but Juji Mufu was big as well on YouTube. And I just said to him that, like, do you do YouTube? Like, because like you were clearly very strong. Like, because V at the time was still like he was still bigger than, like, he's not small by any means, but he was still a lot bigger back then. So I just said to him, do you do this kind of stuff? Marius was still kind of competing at the time. And well, Marius is still, I don't know, he's kind of doesn't know really yet, but he was still competing at the time. And we went to the yard doing the strongman stuff. And I just said, look, I had a bit of experience, a small bit of experience kind of doing like YouTube videos for like my friends. Kind of, it was different. It wasn't like sports or anything like that. It was kind of like, Call of Duty montage videos back in the day. Like they were the big things. So I said, look, I had a little bit of editing experience. And I said, sure, why don't we just go and, start recording it? And it kind of just kicked off from there. So basically doing that one video, I think we put it up at the time. I think the channel had about 300 subscribers. We were getting like 100, 150 views for putting up the videos. And you're like, look, there's 150 people watching the views. And then I got to a stage that, like, I don't know, we're kind of doing training, and then it's hard to do strongman like training every day, year round. It's just the body is not able for it. You're going to have to take periods where you're not doing it. We tried to do a couple of gym videos and things like that. They don't really, like, it's terrible to say, but they don't really do well. And it's not trying to get the most out of the video. Like it's nice to do a video that people like to watch, or the algorithm, because you're still trying to grow the channel, all these kind of things. It's not the best way of doing this, but you still, if you want to grow the channel, you kind of have to play with the algorithm, the YouTube algorithm as such. And then we started seeing like the shows like Big Laws, obviously Lawrence Shalda, he was doing like all these kind of prediction videos, the roundup videos, and we were like, oh, that's a good idea. We like this kind of stuff. So we're like, why don't we try it? And anyone that's seen some of the older videos, they had like a whiteboard that in the evening when we were finished in the gym, you'd kind of just go and write on the board, or the athletes, our predictions, all this. And then it just kind of went, and then it ends up in here, having this little studio that we have, making these videos. And that's really it. It doesn't, there was never really like definitive points where we kind of changed it along the way. It just kind of naturally happened along the way.
That's really nice, because I think most people assume that you either make it with your first video or you don't.
Yeah, that is the thing as well. So like, I'm not going to lie, there were certain points along the way where we've made videos and you're kind of, the views might have been extremely lower. Now, not like I mean, like when you had like a couple of hundred views, so, like when we were in the first 30 videos maybe, or 25 videos, and we're like, it's hard because like Vitautas has 3 kids. He has the business he's running. I have a full-time job. We were kind of doing it in the evenings, or if we had time on the weekend. And not that like we were looking for monetary stuff out of it, but it didn't seem like the channel was growing. And we were kind of like, we were at stages kind of thinking, oh, maybe stop, maybe go on. And then we kind of left it for a few weeks. And then the next Giants live show, or the next kind of big show came along, and we wanted to give our predictions. We were nearly itching to make a video to give her like our opinion on it. And we were just like, that's never going to go away. So it might just keep going, because it's fun doing it. We love seeing the comments, like the amount of interactions that we get, say, from people commenting. And like some people, strongman, they just love it, and that's their main sport. And we understand that that's their main sport. And it's love seeing how they feel about it. I love seeing, say, it's so enticed in their life. And when you're seeing like how, because people with strongman, it's not really considered the main sport. Like it's kind of a niche sport, as people say. Like you kind of, other athletes and things kind of come into this sport after doing other sports when they're younger, all this. And it's just nice to see that the community that's there, like we mentioned about the community obviously in the past few weeks and things that have gone on, but the community is very tight knit. Like it's a very small community, and it's nice to get in there and see how people, what to think about the shows, what to think about athletes, what to think about events. And it's just that back and forth is that's what really keeps me kind of editing the videos. That's what said, making sure that we make sure to make a video. That's why I really like just the back and forth. Look, you can make €1 million, you can make a tenner, you can make whatever off the videos, but I just love seeing the comments. When you have a lot of comments on a video, whether there's no likes or subscribers, whatever, I just love seeing the comments, because you just get to see what people think about your opinions, which is, like I was saying earlier, just the opinions are the main thing. Like,
I like that viewpoint, because sometimes you might look at a video and it's only got a few hundred views, but if there were a few hundred people in front of you listening to you talk, you'd be blown away.
Yeah.
And the same with the comments. If you had 50 people come up to you and say, "Oh, I love what you said there," or I want to challenge you on that, that would be amazing. And what you guys are doing is well, it's fantastic. You mentioned the past few weeks; they have been a turbulent few weeks for strongman, and I think a lot of people would say it's been hard to find some positives to look for. And we've had the really tragic, untimely passing of Pa O'Dwyer, which is just heartbreaking, for his young children and for everyone. And then we've had, obviously recently this week, the Arnold losing 3 of its main athletes. And I wondered, what do you think that means for the Arnold this year? Do you think they're going to stick at 9? Will they bring in a few extras?
Yeah, it has been, like I said, it's a very crazy time the last couple of weeks. Like from the tail end of 2025, like literally, like the strongest man on earth not going ahead for next year, the passing of Pa. Then you have Tom Stoneman saying that he's not going to Arnold's after Bjornsson. Obviously, he's focused on the enhanced games. He's going to go for the deadlift world record. Look, understandably, he wants to try to get the money. I can understand why. Then you have Luke Richardson pulling out of Arnold's, and I can't imagine what headspace Luke is in at the moment, because like Luke, like, I understood how close they were, Luke and Pat, but I never thought to that degree how close they were. I thought they were friends, but to me, we mentioned in the last video we made, like, that they seemed literally like brothers. It was like a brother was after passing, or someone like that close that just goes beyond being a friend, if you know what I mean. It's just family member status. And I can clearly understand, like, coming up to Brits, especially. Brits is what, 3 weeks, 4 weeks away. He took probably a week and a half off. He probably wasn't training, wasn't eating correctly, wasn't sleeping. That kind of puts your prep into a different situation. With Arnold, then, you know, like, Arnold is such a heavy show and it's a raw show. You have to be there. You have to be at the very top. There's no error for you. Can't have any errors, because that just leads to injuries. When it comes to the Arnold, then it's, well, like, I've heard that there hasn't been reserves there for a number of years. So if an athlete dropped out, you know, you might lose an athlete or two. I've seen Mitchell Hooper on his Instagram stories was talking the other day that, and he made a valid point, that this year's Arnold was 12 athletes. We've never had 12 athletes. It's always been 10 athletes. If you lose 3 athletes, it's down to 9. And in past years, you would have had a 10 athlete lineup and you would have lost 1. You'd still run with 9 maybe, or you could have had a reserve, all these kind of things. Will they actually fill it back up to 12? I'm not sure. It'd be nice to see 12 athletes at it, but when it comes to it now, the issue is that because the show is so heavy, some athletes, if they're, like, you know, they're deloading, or they're kind of taking a rest period or whatever it may be, they mightn't be, it, you know, like, even at, say, 60% or 70% where they need to be, and then that extra 8 weeks to get to that heavy raw status for, like, you know, especially the elephant bar deadlift, where you see this was the sandbags up the ramp, like, it's a lot of weight. And with these athletes, I can completely understand that if they wouldn't want to take it, if it's that close and there's a fear of injury. But I think that Arnold did the right thing. Was it Brian Powers, the executive director, put up the Instagram story and mentioned that they're actively looking for replacements for the athletes. So, look, there will be an announcement from the sound of it. If they're putting up a statement like that, there will be an announcement of new athletes. The thing is, who will they get on such a short notice? I wouldn't really know. I know that Matthew Ragg has put his name out there. Andre Futu has put his name out there, saying that they're looking, you know, to get an invite. But, like, those 2 athletes, I think, fair enough. If they were invited, I think it would be a very good addition to the lineup. But in certain situations, if they want to try to find a third athlete, I don't know. Like, they're 2 names that have actively put their name forward. So even if we got 2 extra athletes, or even 1 extra athlete, just to get up to the original 10 that we would have had at Arnold, it would seem fine, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that would be very expected for us to see at least a 10th person. But also, it's going to be tricky, I imagine, for them to get anyone from Europe, because those guys might be peaking for Europe's strongest man, and then they might have qualified for Worlds, which is very shortly after that. So, for instance, if they invited Paddy Haynes, he's obviously got Brits, then he's got Europe's, then he's got Worlds already. And I wondered, like, with Worlds being a little bit earlier this year, I think it's around April 23rd to 26th. Do you think that's going to impact Europe's at all? Do you think we're going to see people pulling out of that in order to be fully prepped for Worlds?
Yeah, I think it's a valid point, because, like, throughout the years, from the sounds of it, like, you know, World's Strongest Man used to kind of be at the tail end of the summer, if I remember, like, from hearing stories correctly, years and years ago. And it seems slowly just gets getting pushed back, you know, to the start of the year. Like, what was it? I think it was the second week in May last year, and now it's like the last week in April. So, especially being so close, I think it is only 11th of April is Europe's Strongest Man, I think, if correctly. That's 2 weeks. And, like, if athletes qualify a Europe's Strongest Man to get to Worlds, then they're not going to leave the day, you know, they're not going to leave April 23rd to go to America. Like, so they're going to have to leave a few days earlier. Then you have the situations that you're after peaking for a show, and then you have to take a week off, and then you need to be peaked again for another show. Your body is still going to be tired, all these things. So it will get to a stage, I think, that the athletes that are competing in Europe, if they haven't qualified for Worlds and they're, like, getting ready to get to Worlds, and I hate to say it, but they could end up with injuries if that's the case. Because if in your head you're like, right, Europe is my last chance to get to Worlds, I need to get onto the podium, then you have the situation then that you literally, if, like, we know as well, a lot of strongmen they're full-time workers. Like, you know, there's only a handful of athletes that can do strongman as a full-time job. So a lot of people might have jobs that they might have family things that they have to be going on, and then you just have to drop it really quick to basically go for a whole week or even sometimes a bit more to go compete in a strongman competition. And it's not even just the actual strongman side of it. It's not just even, you know, oh, I have to go deadlift or I have to go do sandbag carries. It's the stuff in the background that's like, because again, strongmen are still human. They still have, you know, they still have day-to-day lives that have to get done. And on a 2-week short period as well, it can be very tough. And then it comes to a stage also that if athletes, you know, that are competing at Europe's are already qualified for Europe's, if you know what I mean. Like if they're qualified for Europe's or Worlds, I should say, that if they get there, then you have to try fill up the 25 athlete roster, and you mightn't have everyone qualified. So, you know, it's especially with a 2-week time frame. Like, you realistically, by the middle of March to the end of March, we'd want to start seeing kind of an idea of a main roster for World's Strongest Man, if that makes sense. Because if you leave it later than that, I think it's unfair to the athletes in that situation. Because, you know, like we've had, like 2025 is a perfect example. Rain O'Neill, like, comes in, wins the World's Strongest Man, was Strongman Champions League champion, didn't compete in Giants Live, to a lot of people under the radar kind of stuff. And he comes in, wins the show. But I think he was a last minute call up to a degree. I'm not sure how many weeks he was given of notice. But you have situations like that. There are some athletes who might only get a couple of weeks for certain shows. And there's the argument then as well, if you want to be competing at the top level, you should be expecting maybe to get a call up. So you kind of nearly have to be in fighting shape the whole time, if that makes sense. But it's hard in this sport to always be at, you know, that 80, 85% ready to get to that 100% peak mark all year round, because it, like you're saying, it just ends in injuries. Or especially if an athlete is like, oh, I know, I have a good feeling I'm going to get invited to this show, and then the invitation never comes. It's disheartening as well. So I think with Europe's Strongest Man being so close to Worlds, it makes, how do I put it? It makes trying to get a fully competitive World's Strongest Man harder, if that makes sense. Because if you have athletes that are only there on 2 weeks of rest period coming into it, it kind of seems like a bit of a long-winded way of saying it, but basically being so close to World's Strongest Man, I think, is not really feasible to have athletes be at their peak condition. It's like it gives the athletes that are qualified a long, long time ago a way more of an advantage than athletes that are qualified 2 weeks beforehand.
I think you're spot on. And I know there are things that people like us perhaps never think about. Paddy said when he got his invite to Worlds so late last year because he podiumed at Europe's, it was things like, you've got to get a visa for America. And you've got to head into London and go to the embassy because there's no time to do it via the post. And I think there are certain athletes that I know, for instance, Adam Bishop, he performs at his best when he has a really big, solid lead up to a comp, almost like a 12-week block of training. And then you've got other athletes who seem to be able to, kind of flick quickly between competitions. And that was something that I was going to go next, which was last year. I think a lot of people would say Paddy Haynes had one of the standout years because he, missed out on a podium at Brits, but that got him a reserve invite to Europe. The reserve invite to Europe's, he got in at the last minute, managed to get to the podium, snuck into Worlds last minute, came 5th. That led to Royal Albert Hall, deadlift champs, Rogue Invitation, so all those things are possible. But I wondered, do you see anything like that happening this year? Do you see anyone having that level of breakout?
That's the thing as well. Like, in hindsight, you say like, say for instance with Paddy, with Rain O'Neill, you see these athletes come in that had phenomenal years. Like Reno, especially the first half of the year for him, like World's Strongest Man, your first time of going to it, last minute call up, all these kind of stuff. It's kind of like movies are wrote about it. It never really happened. But with Paddy's situation, like Paddy kind of burst onto the scene. I know he was competing obviously for a few years, but burst onto the scene, made a great name for himself, competing in Giants Live, doing so well with some of the events, like especially the deadlift. I think the deadlift for reps is crazy. His movement with sandbags, with loading, all these kind of things it's phenomenal stuff. Like breaking the Husafell stone record, the 200 kilo shield carry at giant, all these things. And like, he's not the biggest athlete, he's not the tallest athlete, he's just an athletic, strong athlete. So when it comes to that, I don't really know. The one thing, like me and Vitautas have spoke about before in the past, there's an athlete competing in the Czech Republic, athletes competing, or Czechia athletes competing in Europe. Maciej Funiak, I think his name, 20 years of age. To me, like, for me, he's the one to watch at Europe's Strongest Man, because he's just at 20 years of age. I think he's got like a 200 kilo log. He's got a 400. Is it a 400 kilo deadlift? I can't remember. I know that he does 350 kilos for reps, say with the suit and things like that on deadlifts. So like, his base is there. Now the thing is, it's terrible to say, we've had athletes in the past that have competed at World's Strongest Man, like Kevin Nee, who's competed at such a young age, and injuries kind of, stopped him along the way. You have Alexei Novikov, won Worlds at such a young age, and then the injuries come along down the line. And I hope, like, knock on wood, Maciej doesn't get affected by these kind of things. But if he does well at Europe's Strongest Man and he manages to get a place, I think even at World's Strongest Man, like, you'd be a fool not to have a look at him and say, right, he could perform really well. Not saying that he'll make it to the top 10, like, Paddy going and making it fifth in the world, I think was like, that's amazing. Like, to get to that level so quickly, and like you're saying, like, misses out barely in Britain's, reserve for Europe's, gets in at Europe's, and then finishes fifth. Like, it's like with Rain O'Neill, it's something that doesn't ever really happen. And like, these kind of two things to happen in one kind of World's Strongest Man is crazy to think the least. But to be honest, other than that, with athletes, I can't really see something like that happening. Maybe not this year, but not, say, for another while yet. Because even we have Andre Futu, obviously, again, another incredible young Czech athlete. But he's shown himself that he's able to do this. It wouldn't be a surprise to me if he went and won it, because his caliber is there, if that makes sense. But like, someone to just burst onto the scene and do so well, I could be wrong, but maybe there is an athlete out there. But at the moment, there's no one that I would really have my eyes on other than Maciej, basically.
That's a great pick. I think a lot of people thought that this might be the year of Luke Richardson after his comeback at World Tour Finals, and his mindset about just going all in and seeing what he can do. And obviously, like you mentioned earlier, the tragic passing of Pa impacting him so deeply. I hope I'm not wrong. I heard that Pa was going to be Luke's best man at his wedding, and just an enormous shift for what is quite a young man in Luke Richardson, and dealing with that grief.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and with that leaves that question mark over when we'll see Luke return. None of us can know that, and obviously the sensitive thing to do is for everyone to give that man as much time as he needs to get right mentally and physically, and then come back. With him missing out at Brits and the Arnold, and maybe we'll see him at Europe's, we're not sure. Do you think it shakes up the lineup at Brits? Was he your winner?
Yeah, for me personally, I would have thought Luke. Obviously, the injuries that Luke has had over the number of years, like what I think he said at one time, was it like £40,000 in surgeries? Like, it was crazy amount of money. And like we said as well, like, strongman, if you're at the top, like, you're at the very top with the top athletes, you can make some money. But even to have £40,000 over your head, it's crazy to think that sort of money, you have to try to make it back with winnings, or if you have a full-time job and trying to repay it, all this kind of stuff. So to have that over your head, then obviously trying to recover from the injuries, thinking that you've had so many injuries at such a young age. He's like, what, 28, 29, I think. I'm not really sure off the top of my head. I know he's roughly around the same age as myself. But to be going through this, and like, he won what, the Europe's Strongest Man in 2020. Like, what was he would have been 22 years of age, probably. Like, a big thing to win at such a young age, and then all these injuries that come along it. And then, like, as he said himself, he said in the Giants Live podcast, he said it at shows, he just doesn't care anymore, he'll go, he'll compete, he does whatever, because if he gets injured, he just doesn't care. He'll just keep doing it. He just loves the sport. And that mindset, like me and V said, is that like it's a bit crazy to say it, but to be honest, I think you kind of need that mindset after going through such amount of things. Like it's different to say like if someone had one injury and they'll say, oh, you know, I'm getting back into it. I don't really care if I get injured. But to say like I have 5 injuries probably in the last 5 years, I'd say he's probably not gone a year without having a surgery performed on it. And to me, like I just loved his mindset. I loved his well-roundedness of an athlete. Like his overhead is good, deadlift is good, like moving is good. Everything was like he was such a well-rounded strongman, and he seemed like a genuinely nice guy, like good morals, all this kind of thing as an athlete. And he just seemed like a perfect face for strongman, if you know what I mean. And I really thought going off the back end of last year with the wins and how he was competing, I think Britain's strongest man was going to be hands down. Like I know that Tom Stoneman obviously is Tom Stoneman. You can't ever rule him out, but I still think Luke would have picked him a little bit, and Luke would have won Britain's strongest man. And now that Luke is obviously gone, it really leaves kind of a vacuum for me at the top. Now the thing is with Tom Stoneman saying that he's not competing at Arnold's strongest man, or Arnold Strongman Classic, I should say, that he is going to be competing at Britain's. So for me, it seems like he's going to put everything for Britain's. He's going to take some time off and go everything for World's Strongest Man. So to be honest, I think Tom Stoneman, in my opinion now, is probably the favourite to win Britain's Strongest Man.
I think you'd be hard pushed to disagree with that. Who do you think could fill out the podium with him, second and third?
Fill out the podium. I would look. The thing is, we mentioned it as well. Britain's Strongest Man this year. It's got so many great athletes. You've had you've had Adam Bishop coming back. Adam Bishop, as people remember, it was at the World Deadlift Championships. He looked like a unit. I remember there was like a background, like he was in the background video, put the headphones in, and he was like a human version of a snowman. It was just like round everywhere. And you can see like he's after coming back. He's really focused. Was it last year with the sandbag steeplechase and things like that? He's had issues and things. Now look, coming back this year, he's probably really focused on getting his fitness, getting his strength, everything back. So Adam Bishop is good. Graham Hicks obviously coming back. Luke Stoneman is in great shape. Like you were seeing last year, he was nearly like a bodybuilder, like at the shows last year. It's hard to tell, but I genuinely think that Tom Stoneman will be there. Paddy Haynes, I think everybody, if you don't have Paddy Haynes on the podium now at this stage, look, Paddy is like he's the dark horse. Like, you know, at this stage now he's competed so many times. He's proved himself in Giants Live as well. So I think Paddy. After that, I think Ben Glasscock. I think like Ben has shown at Shaw Classic, like the men's open. He's proved it that he's able to compete at these heavier shows. So I think probably that'd be my top three. I think in that situation.
That would be incredible. I can't hide my bias too much. Ben and Bish are both mates in real life.
Yeah.
I would love to see that. And you're not wrong about Bish. He is the biggest human being this side of the pond I've ever seen. If you've ever seen Brian Shaw in real life, no one will ever be that big.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be incredible. You're right, Brits is stacked, even with Luke sadly dropping out. Is there anyone you think we might have as a bit of a surprise package?
The thing is with surprise, so like to me, Rory O'Hagan. Like I think people are going to be like, if you don't know Rory, if you haven't seen him competing, like to think about Rory, he doesn't really post that much on Instagram. He doesn't really post that much. He goes through like phases, maybe putting up stories, or he might put up a post here and there. But like if you've seen Rory compete, like he, like just honestly, I think was it Paddy Haynes said in one of your last videos, like put a fiver on him, he'll surprise you. Like, but that is the truth. Like I've seen Rory competing at say the UK or the Ultimate Strongman, Ireland's Strongest Man. Obviously, I was there looking at him competing that day. I wasn't at the Giants Live Ireland's qualifier set for Giants Live for Britain's Strongest Man. Would have liked to have gone up to it, but unfortunately I wasn't able. But like you see some of the videos that came afterwards, like he's just like, you look at Rory, like he's just I'm not trying to be insulting to him, but he looks like an average guy. Like, he is strong, he's got muscle on him, but you look at him, he's like, how can you overhead press? Like, what was it, 165 kilo axle, I think is what he did. Like, he can do 350 kilos on the deadlift like it's nothing. Like, he can move. Like, it's just, I don't know. Like, people will see Rory standing there and you'll be like, no, he won't. Like, when you see all these big, massive behemoths beside him, it's like, no, Rory, you will be surprised. He can move. His overhead is relatively strong. His deadlift is good. Like, he's just the three main things you're kind of going to need at these kind of giant live shows. He's got it. And I genuinely think I'd be surprised, like, if he wasn't pushing towards getting towards top 5. Like, people will be surprised with Rory. As long as he stays fit and keeps his head down, I think Rory will be a surprise package.
Totally agree. And he's a young guy. He's still moving in that natural scene as well. Like, the future is incredibly bright for him, I think. Shane, thank you so much for your time today, pal. I really, really appreciate you sticking through all the internet troubles. And I think people are going to really have enjoyed hearing your thoughts on things. And let's see how Brits turns out. Let's see if you're all right.
Well, look, I think for Tom, it'd be nice to see Tom win Britons again. Paddy, Ben, look, genuinely, I think Ben really surprised me with how he competed at the Shaw Classic, the men's open. And like we were saying with Paddy has had a phenomenal 2025. So I'd be surprised. Look, Luke Stoneman again, like you're saying, you can't really rule out the older, the veterans like Luke, Graham, Adam Bishop, all these kind of guys. But look, I think a lot of people now with Luke Richardson after leaving, they'll be all wondering, like, what is the podium going to be? So it's going to be a really good show, I think.
I can't wait. Shane, thank you so much, mate. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Luke.